You won't believe what just came out of Jones and Nate Diaz's mouths. Two of the most iconic names in MMA history have publicly admitted they barely even watch the UFC anymore. In a jaw-dropping moment caught on camera, Jones says he only tunes in if it's his weight class, while Diaz goes even harder, saying we don't even know nobody anymore. Are the glory days of the UFC fading away? Is the current roster failing to excite legends? Let's break it all down. This changes everything. Hey, fight fans! Before we dive into today's explosive UFC drama, make sure to smash that like button, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on those notifications so you never miss the realest fight talk on YouTube. Now buckle up, because what we're about to unpack could shake the foundations of how you see the UFC today. In a moment that took both hardcore and casual fight fans by surprise, two of the most iconic names in UFC history, Jones and Nate Diaz, let loose on what they really think about the current state of the UFC. And they didn't hold back. During a candid conversation while filming a Russian reality show in Thailand, yes, you heard that right, Thailand, these two legends of the Octagon revealed that they've grown disillusioned with the sport that made them global superstars. Jones, arguably the greatest light heavyweight champion of all time, admitted bluntly, I barely watch the UFC these days unless it's my weight class. Let that sink in. Jones, who was once the face of the UFC and a dominant force feared by every contender, openly said he's just not interested anymore unless it directly involves him. That's more than just a casual remark. That's a statement. A red flag. A loud siren blaring across the MMA landscape. But if you thought that was bold, Nate Diaz took it a step further with his own brutal honesty. Who are all these people? We don't even know nobody, he said, shaking his head in that classic Diaz way. He described the sport's momentum right now as slow-moving, suggesting that the UFC has lost the adrenaline, the fire, the chaos that used to make it must-watch TV every weekend. And it's not just their words, it's the weight behind them. These are not just former fighters sitting on a podcast reminiscing about the good old days. This is John freaking Jones and Nate Stockton Slap Diaz, two warriors who helped carry the UFC into mainstream sports culture. For them to look at the current crop of talent and feel nothing, that says a lot. This bombshell has ignited a firestorm of debate among fans and analysts. Some agree completely, saying the UFC has lost its edge, that it's become too commercial, too cookie-cutter. Others argue this is just nostalgia talking, that every generation of fans believes their era was the best. But here's the question, if legends like Jones and Diaz are no longer captivated by the UFC product, is it just them, or is something actually broken in the UFC machine? Let's unpack that. First, think about how the UFC built its empire. It wasn't just about skills, it was about personalities, characters, chaos. Remember when Conor McGregor lit up press conferences with wild antics and even wilder knockouts? Or when Ronda Rousey bulldozed her way through the women's division like a real-life video game boss? Or when Nate Diaz choked out McGregor and then dropped the mic with, "I'm not surprised, mother"? These were moments, cultural moments. And they pulled millions into the sport. But today, who's capturing that kind of magic? Sure, there are insanely talented fighters out there, Islam Makhachev, Ilia Topuria, Khamzat Chimaev, and Sean O'Malley all have insane skill sets, but are they household names in the way Jones, Diaz, or McGregor were at their peak? Are they causing casual fans to cancel plans on Saturday nights and huddle around a screen? Maybe not quite yet. What Jones and Diaz are really touching on is the heart of what makes the UFC electric: connection. They're pointing out a disconnect between today's rising stars and the loyal fans who built this sport from the ground up. And maybe that disconnect comes from oversaturation. Too many cards, too many events, not enough build-up. Remember when a UFC pay-per-view felt like an event, something sacred and unmissable? Now, it feels like there's a new fight night every week, and sometimes it's hard to keep up, let alone get emotionally invested. Let's also be real, social media plays a massive role. In the past, fighters built their legacy in the cage. Now, TikTok followers and Instagram clout are part of the equation. Jones and Diaz come from a generation that bled in the octagon, not for likes, but for legacy. So it's not surprising that they might feel out of step with a new era that values viral moments over vicious wars. That said, we can't ignore another angle. Maybe this is just the natural evolution of the fight game. Legends fade, new kings rise. Every sport goes through this. Michael Jordan retired, but then LeBron came. The same might be happening in the UFC. Maybe we're just waiting for the next once-in-a-generation star to grab us by the throat and scream, "This is my era."